Welcome to our very first episode. I'm so excited to be getting started with this show. The show doesn't actually, at the time of this recording, have an official name even. So we're just going to dive straight in. Today, our guest is Jessie Lewis, and I would love for her to just tell you a little bit about herself.
All right. Hello, guys. I'm Jessie Lewis. I am a copywriter turned copywriting coach. And I love copy. I love sharing what I know and sharing what's worked for me. And really, I've had kind of an eclectic career as far as going from content to copy to social media. And it's all kind of jumbled together. But I'm excited to chat copy with you guys today.
Oh, how fun. I totally relate to that whole, like, here, there, it's all coming together somehow.
Yeah.
I feel you there for sure. And I'm sure that some of our listeners do as well. Today, Jessie is going to share a sales email that she put out that really worked for her. So what do you think, Jessie, is the thing that, what worked about this?
Yeah, so this was an interesting email. So to give a little bit of background, before this was sent out, I have been building an email list kind of as a almost side project within my business. So I started doing it when I was just working with clients one-on-one. The majority of my clients came from referrals, came from relationships, the typical ways, but all the while I was building this email list. And I had never really used it to sell. Like I had it on and off, and I knew, like shame on me. I'd been working, so much on this side thing. But at this point I had, I had about 800 subscribers on this list, and I had a slow month, and I was like, you know what, let's just throw something out there. I was in the midst of preparing to make a transition in my business from trying to look into a one-to-many offering. And as I was working on planning that out, I'm like, you know what, I don't want to be taking on any more client projects right now, but I still want to be bringing in a little bit of income, and hence this email was born. So this was it was a one-off email. It went out to 800 or 799 people and brought in about $2,500. And that I thought was pretty cool. So I'd say that worked from the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. Those are some numbers that show me that worked. Exactly. What do you think it was that worked about it? If you want to just go through, I can scroll. I'm the one sharing the screen here, so just kind of direct me, and you can share a little bit about this email that you wrote.
Yeah. So what you don't see here, so I'll just give the full info. The subject line for this was called "A Quick Opportunity for You." And what really worked was that because I had already built up such a rapport with my audience, like again, I hadn't really been selling to them before. They were just used to getting free content and free trainings from me every single week. This just came out as another weekly email. So this actually had a pretty decent open rate, had a 34% open rate. And part of it was a subject line, but the other part is that I always like to start out personally with a hello first name. It can be a little bit cheesy, but in my opinion, that's what shows up when they're looking at it in their inbox. And so having their name in there, I gather their name on every single form, having that name just right there catches attention. So already I have a fairly high open rate. And then from there, if you can scroll down just a little bit, this section here, or just the whole intro area. This section here, I'm writing, as a subscriber, you get to hear special updates from me that aren't shared publicly. So I'm going in with this feeling of exclusivity. And because it was absolutely true, this offering that I put out was only going out to subscribers. And then from there, I gave them an out. You can see it says, now, if you're totally happy with your website and email copy, feel free to delete this and move on with your day. And I'll be back in your inbox later. But I wanted this to be a really clear yes or no. Like, are you reading this or are you not? So from there, I assume that if they're going to be reading this, then they're probably, a little bit in working with me. And we go into pain points. So these are pain points that I have learned from my years of working with clients, as well as doing lots of voice of customer research, actually going in and researching with the conversations that my ideal clients are having in different online areas, and seeing the language that they're using, seeing what they're saying their problems are. And then of those, the ones that I knew that I could solve with this offering. So we've set that all up. We have the pain points, and then I make a big promise. We're going to get it done in one day. So yeah, we can just keep running through here. So
yeah, let's keep going.
Okay, perfect. So what this offering really is, before you read too much into this here, is a day rate. So if you're unfamiliar with a day rate, it's essentially saying you can hire me for this many hours. What we get done, and that's it. And it's an interesting way of working, because on one hand, it's not value-based pricing, right? It's something that I typically recommend, right? We want to be charging for the value of our work, not necessarily just the hours that we work. But at the same time, this kind of offering can be a really good cash injection, which is exactly what I wanted to use it for. So
I have a question here with that
yeah.
day rate. Is this something that you had done with clients before? Like, to any degree, had you done like a 6-hour block? I think I saw that it was.
Yeah. So I had actually, at this point, I wasn't even marketing myself as a copywriter, even though many people knew me as that. I was starting to make the transition into coaching. But I had done quite a few of these earlier in my freelancing career. It was something that when I was working, especially with people who were newer, who just needed to get some copy written quickly, I was like, hey, I've got a day rate. And it's a really easy sell, honestly, because when I can say, as you can see here, 3 to 4 website pages or a full sales page or a full welcome sequence written up in one day, that's like, oh my gosh. Now, of course, you go in with the expectation that like, it's not going to be perfect. There might be typos. Like, I am furiously typing away at the keyboard for 6 hours. And so, it's definitely an unusual offering, but yeah, I'd absolutely done this before.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm working with here is, you can see right there at the top, I have some extra time this month, so I'm opening up 2 VIP copywriting days for subscribers only. And that is absolutely real. That's one thing we started out with that exclusive language from the beginning, but in this portion too, I wanted to make it clear, like, this is just, I've got 2 slots, and that wasn't fake. I wasn't, saying, haha, I've got 2 slots and secretly going to book everyone who, writes in. I just had a little bit of time and I wanted to throw this out there, but it does do that double duty of the fact that this is exclusive. This is time sensitive. If you want it, you got to get it now. And then we move on to what's on your copy to-do list. And my goal here is to communicate kind of the use cases, the situations or scenarios that they might be able to use that for, which is really important for something like a day rate. A day rate, I call them VIP copywriting days, but it can be used in so many different ways. And to just say, hire me for 6 hours, people are gonna be like, well, what do I get? So this is talking about the outcome. This is the results, or even it's kind of overlapping with the benefits, but what they want to get done. And it's making a promise. I could do this or this or this or this. And then if you scroll down just a little bit more, so once I've outlined what all those individual things are, and hopefully they've identified what one of those is, they're like, oh, I need to get that done. Then we go into the how. So if you can think of this kind of outline, we started out with the pain points, we made it real for them, and now we're talking about setting expectations about what this actually looks like. So after signing up, they get a questionnaire. We have a call the day before, and then you can see that third bullet there, we hit the ground running for 6 hours, broken up into 2 sections. I'm 100% focused on writing or reworking your copy in a shared Google Doc. And then just to highlight another one here as well, that last one, you walk away with professionally written copy and a much happier to-do list. I always like to add this at the end of how-to section, or sorry, what to expect sections, where we're talking about how something works, is to, obviously that's not necessarily like how it's going to be done. That's an outcome that we're talking about, but it just kind of brings the mind full circle to, hey, and here's that thing that you're getting. Remember that thing that you want? Here it is.
Yep, I love that.
So at this point, I just dropped the price. But you can see I'm kind of doing, I forget the exact term, but a price comparison here. So at the time I was offering one-off copy coaching hours for $197. And then the 6 hour then is just $797, which, as you can see, is a 33% discount. It's a full third off the price. And as I was writing this, I knew just from that alone, like, that's a huge discount. I know that if they're at this point of reading, it's probably going to work well. And these are all real numbers. I wasn't, saying, ha ha, I always work for this. One of my big things is being really honest about, all marketing really.
Mm-hmm.
But when it lines up, when you can offer a discount like that, it's powerful.
Yeah, thank you for doing the math for us too.
That took lots of retries. Yes. But yeah, no, I love that you bring that up, because that's definitely a big thing.
It is, yeah.
Is actually naming it for them. So yeah, so as you can see, go for it.
Yeah. I like to say, don't make them think.
Yes, spell it out for them. And it's interesting, the spelling it out for them as a concept. When I'm writing, I'm usually spelling out a lot more. This is actually the result of lots of revisions. This was initially a lot longer, but trying to find out, like, what are really the pieces that they need to be taking from this as they go. So this section here, as I mentioned before, this is something I'd done before. So I had testimonials, and luckily, because I had offered this exact offering before, I was able to have really targeted ones. So you can see, she accomplished more than I imagined in the 6 hours. I was able to mention the 6 hours by name. And then, testimonials, and it's one thing I debated actually including these testimonials or not, because it is an email. And as you can see, it's starting to get pretty long. Like, if you can imagine this just landing in your inbox, it's like, oh my gosh. But my reasoning, and it held true, was just the idea that, well, if they're at this point of the email, they're invested. Like, there's no need to make a short email just for the sake of writing a short email. I'm a big believer in the fact that something should be as long as it needs to be in order to communicate what you need to communicate.
Yes, I absolutely agree.
All right, so if you could scroll down just a little bit more, we'll go ahead and wrap this up down here at the end. So my call to action here was to just hit reply. And I did this specifically because I wanted it to be as easy as possible. This was one email that I just wrote up and sent out. And I reiterated that there were only 2 spots available. Now, I will say one thing here. One thing, if I were to do this again, something I wouldn't do, is I said want in or just more info. I would have just left it to want in, because I filled those spots so quickly. So within, it was just 1 or 2 hours, I had gotten my 2 people booked. I had a former client receive the email, and we had another conversation going on at the same time, trying to find a way to work together that fit both of our schedules. This came out, and she saw this, and she was like, oh my gosh, I want it. And I was like, well, I just booked the 2. You know what? She's an existing client. I'm always going to take care of my existing clients first because they're my people. I'll always happy, welcome more people in, but, it's just a good mentality to have is, the people who have already worked with you, you want to keep reinvesting in them. So that I booked 3 spots, and then I added 2 people on the wait list. And some people had just reached out asking for more info. And as a result, they, maybe may have not gotten on the priority list versus the people who said, I'm ready to work with you. And so, it's just one thing I would have done differently is just say, want in, hit reply, and let me know. If people wanted more info, then they could have just replied and asked for more information.
Yeah.
But as you can see down here in the PS, I just added that little bit of information. It's like, I'll add you to a wait list here, and you'll be the first to hear if this becomes available again. So the end result of this, as I mentioned before, was a total of 3 clients, 2 client leads, and then one of those clients that I did work with ended up hiring me again, and that is what ended up with the 2,500. So pretty fun little email.
That's such a great story. I love it so much. I was also noticing something about the end of your email, and I hadn't taken a note for it or anything, but your face is there.
Yes.
And this is such a personal invitation. Like, it's almost a come hang out with me all day. And so having your face there is so great. And I know because I'm on your list that you have that on every email. But it makes it so personal.
Yeah, that was actually a tip that I don't remember where I heard it, but I have it just embedded in the footer of my email template. Specifically, it's interesting that you bring that up because it does add that kind of that friendly flavor. But initially I put it in just because I didn't want people to forget who I was. After, once they're on my list, they're not going to my website necessarily as often. If they're ever questioning like, oh, who is that? That picture in the actual email is clickable and it goes right to my website. And it's always interesting looking at my analytics to see just how many people are clicking on it. Like, who is this person? And I do think that it probably leads to fewer unsubscribes because they're like, oh yeah, it's that chick. So
I love that. Okay, I need to go in and edit my template. I know that I have needed to edit my template for a couple of different reasons. That needs to happen. Thank you so much for that tip.
Oh, absolutely.
That's so great.
And again, I can't take credit for it. I picked it up somewhere, but it's been working well for me.
That's how it goes a lot of times. Did you have any other thoughts right here? Because I really want to share something that I noticed about your email. You kind of brought it out a little bit, but I want to get a little bit more explicit about it. Mind if I jump in?
Oh, go for it.
Okay. So one of the things that you talked about was how you kind of had these different, almost different mindsets writing each of the sections of this email. And this is actually something that we teach in our Thoroughbred Entrepreneur program that dives deep into writing and communicating with your audience in a way that actually connects and leads to sales in a natural, like relational way, just like you have expressed here, versus, sales and sleazy tactics and trying to integrate sales hacks and optimizations that are like this color and these words. And I don't want to get into that. And so one of the things that we teach are these templates, these story templates that work, because what you've done here is you've told a story. And the story that you've told is about the transformation that you are offering to these two special people. And so the particular story template that I recognized you using here, we happen to call the Persuasive Template. And like I said, this is something that all kinds of people use. We just happen to have put a certain name to it and certain definitions because you were expressing it as you went through here. You start with this emotional connection. And that's the first step of this Persuasive Template. And the emotional connection, the way that you put it was that feeling of exclusivity that you opened with. And that draws people in because a relationship is built on an emotional connection. And so diving in straight with that feeling of exclusivity that you maintain through the whole email. And as you go on, the sort of the end of this first section is are those pain points, the second half really. So first half, you really lean into the feeling of exclusivity, and then you lean into the even more exclusive portion of your people who aren't happy with their website and email copy. And then you lean into why. And so there's this whole flow of emotions in the first section that is just beautiful.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would love to hear you comment on my copy all day. This is wonderful.
Well, subscribe to the podcast.
Right? Yes. So, but to speak to that, that's definitely something that I try to go for in a lot of my emails, as far as, you can read so much about like, you should be doing this or you should be doing that. And a lot of those things, like the psychological hacks or tricks, a lot of them are really useful. But at the end of the day, it does come down to, as a solopreneur or as someone who has a personal relationship with your subscribers, where you are the face of your business, they're signing up for you. And so why would you not talk to them like normal people, like normal humans, And so that usually comes out as stories because, stories are how we relate to one another in life and everything. It's like stories are the backbone of everything. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of anytime you can give a little bit of background, or even, speaking to the exclusivity side, what this is almost even doing is giving a little bit of behind the scenes,
right.
Talking about, what's going on in my business? Like, oh yeah, because I was just being honest. I'm like, this is where my business is at right now. I didn't have to go like, I have 2 positions available that you could choose, it's just like,
Yeah,
hey,
exactly.
here's where I am. If you want to jump in, here's the offer. So
Yes, it's so genuine. So especially in that first section, you really lean into the emotions. And the second part of the template is, we call it the practical application section. And so this is where you just went in. This is exactly what to expect. I have some extra time. I'm opening up 2 VIP copywriting days. This is a chance to work with me. Get your copy done in one fell swoop. The bullet points in this section are so effective because people can skim. And with a long email especially, the skimmability is a big deal. Can somebody tell at a glance whether they are the person, whether they might be the person for this? And then if the answer is yes, then they're going to want to read every little detail. So including all of those details to figure out, am I really one of these 2 people, is important. But having that skimmability of things like bold and bullet points really makes this section effective. And because it is the practical application part of the story, you do want it to be very clear, not flowery, not overly fancified or anything like that. It's, here's how we'll knock out your copy. This is exactly what you can expect.
Yeah, and to that point, oh, sorry. I just wanted to jump in. Like, one thing that I really focus on in that section is getting really specific, which is basically just bouncing off of what you just said. But anytime, and I tell my students this too, it's like anytime you can get more specific, more like real world scenarios, when we're selling something, we usually lead with, the pain points, like here's your situation, here's the benefit. But when it gets into how things work, or talking about, painting that picture, it really is about getting as specific as possible. So just want to throw that in there. Specificity is really important.
The specific bullet points that you start with what you could have, it's kind of this multiple choice. I really love that because as a business owner and not a writer, the people in your audience who are intrigued by this are likely not really sure what 6 hours means. Like, what can we actually get done in 6 hours? And especially, I was just talking to one of our students, and she was saying that something that we taught her to do took her 30 minutes instead of the usual 5 hours. So they might think, oh, a 6-hour day, we'll like get halfway through something.
Right.
And so laying it out so clearly, 3 or 4 website pages, or a full sales page, that tells me like you're really going to dive in and make sure that this sales page is optimized, versus the 3 or 4 kind of other pages and so on and so forth as you go through these bullet points. That getting really specific that way offers some really great clarity. I love it. The third section of the template that we teach is the paradigm shift. And this is where, well, some people get kind of hung up because they have the emotional connection because they're being real and they're being real people. And so that can come naturally. And then a lot of our students are natural teachers. They're natural educators. We help course creators, so they know how to teach. So the practical application is all there, right? But then that paradigm shift is a call to action. And so don't forget that. And you have it here.
Well,
that's where you've pulled in these testimonials.
And just to speak to that, I love that you're bringing that up, because that is something that I see a lot. It's like you put so much into the maybe you had, a decent intro, you had the how it works. That's, I think, where people feel strongest. They're like, here's what's going to happen first, then this is going to happen, especially if you tend to be more of a process oriented person. And then you're like, click here to work with me. It's like, no, we got to do a little bit more. We got to close that. Yes. And really, with these testimonials specifically, this is about bringing in that that last effort of ethos, really, when we're talking about, rhetorical appeals. Ethos is appealing to, your expertise or showing that you're an authority. And having this close to the call to action, really in any copy, because again, we're talking about templates here or general frameworks that can be used across, a wide variety of different things. Having testimonials near the call to action is really good at sealing that deal for the people who are like, this is sounding really good, but can you actually do that? Like, are you actually the person for me?
Yes. And so there's still a mindset shift that needs to happen there. And so the paradigm shift, we can bring it in. One way to do that is testimonials like you've done here. And I love your use of bold in this testimonial section, because I can skim it and see that Jessie accomplished more than I imagined in the 6 hours. And so if I've got that niggling worry of what can we actually get done in 6 hours, is she going to get tired and this isn't going to be great work? I've got some questions maybe in the back of my mind when I see she accomplished more than I imagined in the 6 hours. She's done this before. Okay. I'm way more trusting. The next bold that you've got, I could tell you what I wanted and what I thought I wanted, and you got me. So that also addresses some potential worries. And then finally, I was too close to the subject, me, to craft the right message. And the context of that is that this client of yours was an actual writer. And so I, as an actual writer, might look at that and go, oh, yeah, maybe it would be really great to just get her eyes on my stuff for 6 hours. And so there you hit on these different little questions that people might have in the back of their mind without saying, and if you're worried about this, you don't need to be,
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's, when I talk to people about testimonials, it's like, that's your opportunity to really hit any objections that might be coming up. Like exactly like you said, those niggling fears, those little, like, is this person really for me? It's like, if you have testimonials of people who are speaking about their experience, and that's another thing too, is being really intentional about the way that you gather testimonials, and so that you're able to get that kind of language, but ones that address, their specific fears that they had going into it. And then that's something that you can highlight in future sales copy. That's really powerful.
Yeah. Yes. It's all so good. And then speaking of bold and making things really obvious for the skimmers, here it is. Want in, hit reply, and let me know. And I have to say, I love how you brought in what you would change. Now looking at it, you've been away from it for a while. You've seen the results as well. And you can see that a way to optimize this would be to remove that parenthetical of responding just for more info. So instead of want in or just more info, hit reply now and let me know. Just keep it clean. Want in, hit reply now and let me know. And so I love that. Even as copywriters, even as professionals, we're constantly looking at what works, what doesn't. That's why we created this podcast. And so you're always tweaking. So I know that one takeaway that I want listeners to walk away with is it doesn't have to be perfect to work. And that's honestly a big goal of this entire podcast, this show that we're doing, is to show that it doesn't have to be perfect and pristine to work and convert. So what would you say is the number one thing that you want listeners today to remember walking away from this episode?
Yeah. Well, I think, we've talked a lot about, a lot of the technical reasons why this copy worked, but I do want to highlight from a bigger picture. If you're looking at, doing a day rate or using this for any kind of offering, is that the reason why this worked specifically is not just because it used those techniques, but because the foundation was there. The offering was targeted toward the right person. It was coming at the right time for some people, and it was at the right price, again, for the intended person. So I'm trying to package this into a nice takeaway, but we can talk about, all the different things that will make, this a little bit better, but do make sure that you have the foundation there as well. When you're looking at what you're preparing to send out, it's not enough to, look at this and say, oh, this, well, adapt something similar. If you are going to do an email like this, what are your people interested in? What are they saying? Do that research behind it. And that's what's going to make something really successful.
I love that. That is such an important point to make, because yes, if you sent this out to 800 people who didn't have a business, you were going to get crickets, no matter how
Exactly.
optimized it was. So that's a really great point. Thank you so much, Jessie, for coming on. Where can people find you online?
Yes. So I am online at jessierlewis.com. That's JESSIERLewis.com. And I've got lots of free blog content, free resources there, and I'd love to have you around.
Yep. So go check out Jessie's website. And today, if you're listening to this and you've gotten to the end and you enjoy what we're doing here, I want to ask you to leave a comment and tell us, especially if you're on YouTube watching this or on IGTV, tell us who you want to see come on. Who should we invite on as a guest? Because we've got some openings and I would love to invite someone that you want to hear from. Why does their copy work so well? Let us know, and we will try and get in contact with them. And thanks again for listening. Thank you, Jessie, for being on. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.